Mandela Effect, a glitch in time or a false memory. The world feels different. You wake up one day and something feels off. The cereal box on your kitchen table has a name you've never seen before. That movie quote you've repeated your whole life? Turns out it never existed. A character from your favorite childhood cartoon looks slightly wrong. But when you check the facts, everyone else seems to agree with the new version. And you're left asking yourself the one question no one wants to answer. Did the world change, or did I? Part 1. What is the Mandela Effect? It starts as a whisper in your memory, a flicker of doubt, a moment when something you've always known suddenly feels unfamiliar. You shrug it off at first. Maybe you're tired. Maybe your brain's playing tricks on you. But then you talk to someone else, and they remember it too, exactly the same way you do. And that's when it hits you. You can't both be wrong. The Mandela Effect is one of the most disorienting and strangely unexplainable psychological phenomena of the modern age. It sits at the intersection of memory, reality, and consciousness, like a fracture in the mirror of everything we believe to be true. At its core, the Mandela Effect is this: a collective false memory. It occurs when large groups of people remember the exact same detail, event, or fact, only to discover that their memory is not supported by physical evidence or the official historical record. But it's not just that the detail is wrong. It's that it feels undeniably right. These memories aren't vague or fuzzy. They're specific, vivid, and emotionally real. People will bet money on them. People have cried over them. Families have argued over them. Teachers, parents, friends, all swearing that they remember a certain version of reality that apparently never existed. And the most chilling part, these aren't isolated cases. They're global. A global phenomenon with no clear origin. The Mandela Effect isn't local. It doesn't belong to one country, one language group, one religion, or one political party. It's cross-cultural, cross-generational, and incredibly consistent. People from all over the world who have never spoken to each other, who grew up in completely different environments, all recall the same wrong details. These are not simple typos or minor slips. They are shared alternate memories that exist outside the documented truth. And that's where the mystery deepens. How is it possible that millions of people can misremember the same thing, in the same way, and all be equally confident that they're right? It's not about forgetting. It's about rewriting. The Mandela Effect is not about forgetting something you learned. It's about remembering something that was never real. That distinction is crucial. You're not confused about what you forgot. You're confident about something that never existed. And you're not alone. That's what makes it so unsettling. For example, you remember the Monopoly man having a monocle. He never did. You remember Curious George swinging from his tail. He never had one. You remember Luke, "I am your father," in Star Wars. That line doesn't exist. You remember the Berenstain bears, but they're the Berenstein bears, and always have been. You remember Nelson Mandela dying in a South African prison, but he lived and became president. These aren't spelling errors or linguistic quirks. These are fractures in perception, and they challenge something deeper, your sense of reality. Because if your memory can be so vivid, so detailed, so certain, and still wrong, then what else might be? The science doesn't satisfy everyone. Most scientists, of course, chalk the Mandela Effect up to the fallibility of the human brain. We misremember things all the time. Our brains take shortcuts. They make assumptions. They fill in gaps with patterns we expect. They blend information from multiple sources. It's normal. But the Mandela effect goes beyond simple psychology. Because here, the errors are identical across millions of people. They're not random. They're consistent. And in some cases, the emotional intensity of the memory is so powerful that people have breakdowns, existential crises, or even panic attacks when confronted with the real version. This isn't just about being wrong. This is about waking up one day and realizing the world isn't what you thought it was. The name behind the phenomenon. The name Mandela Effect comes from the phenomenon's most famous example, the widespread belief that Nelson Mandela, the South African anti-apartheid leader, died in prison in the 1980s. Fiona Broome, a paranormal researcher and writer, coined the term after realizing that not only did she remember Mandela dying decades before his actual death in 2013, but thousands of other people did too. They remembered news footage of the funeral, a televised speech from his widow, crowds of people mourning, moments of reflection in classrooms, on television, even memorials. None of these things ever happened, but the memory, still there. That was the spark that lit the fire. Soon, others came forward with similar strange memories, not just about Mandela, but about books, brand names, pop culture, even geography and human anatomy. And the Mandela Effect became a movement. The mind's most unsettling mirror. Here's why it haunts so many people. If you can't trust your memory, and you can't trust what others remember, and the facts don't line up with what you know you lived through, then what is real? That's the question that unravels people. Because if one small innocent memory, like the tale of a cartoon monkey or the spelling of a children's book, can be completely wrong, then what about your personal memories, your family stories, your childhood, your beliefs? The Mandela Effect doesn't just make people question history, it makes them question themselves. Not just a mistake, a revelation. Some people brush it off, they laugh, call it silly internet fun. But others, they fall down the rabbit hole. They begin to believe there's something more happening, something we're not supposed to notice. Maybe these aren't just mental glitches. Maybe they're footprints left behind after something was changed. A timeline altered, a simulation patched, a reality overwritten. Maybe, just maybe, these Mandela effects aren't accidents, they're evidence. And that is where the story begins. Welcome to the Mandela Effect, a glitch in time, a fracture in perception, a quiet whisper from the edge of reality. This isn't just about what you remember. It's about what remembers you back. So hold on to your memories tight, because after this, you may never trust them the same way again. Part 2. The curious case of Mandela's death. Sometimes a lie is so deeply believed, it starts to feel more real than the truth. And sometimes it isn't a lie at all. It's a ghost, a leftover memory from a reality that no longer exists. The Mandela Effect owes its name to a single moment, a moment remembered by thousands, possibly millions of people around the world. That moment, the death of Nelson Mandela, in prison in the 1980s. People remembered it with total clarity, not vaguely, not passively, vividly. They remembered breaking news reports on the television, front-page newspaper headlines, global mourning, a state funeral broadcast live. Crowds gathered in the streets, lighting candles and holding signs. Tearful speeches from political leaders. Even discussions in school classrooms, where teachers talked about his legacy. It wasn't just a foggy impression. It was specific, emotional, detailed, and shared. But here's the problem. Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison. In fact, he was released in 1990 after 27 years of incarceration, went on to become the President of South Africa in 1994, and lived until December 5th, 2013, when he passed away peacefully at the age of 95. And yet, for an unsettling number of people, that's not what they remember. For them, Mandela died decades earlier, and the 2013 announcement felt wrong, like someone had rewound the tape, overwritten history, and expected no one to notice. The researcher who gave it a name. In 2009, a paranormal researcher named Fiona Broom was attending a science fiction convention when she casually mentioned to others her memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison during the 1980s. To her surprise, others at the table immediately nodded. They remembered it too. They had exactly the same recollections. The news coverage, the photographs, the funeral, the aftermath. It wasn't a passing moment. It was a cultural event that never happened. That realization hit Fiona like a lightning bolt. If so many of us remember something so clearly, how can it be wrong? Is this just memory or something else? From that spark, the term Mandela Effect was born. How could so many be wrong? Psychologists rushed to explain it as a simple case of confabulation, the brain's tendency to fill in gaps, a minor mix-up, a moment where one figure's legacy was confused with another's. Perhaps people were thinking of Steve Biko, another South African activist who did die in custody. Or maybe the Mandela funeral people remember was actually the 1980s coverage of his wife, Winnie Mandela, or the release of anti-apartheid documentaries. That explanation might work for a few individuals, but it doesn't explain why the exact same false details are remembered by people from different countries. Why so many remember the same visuals, the same emotions, the same speeches, none of which ever existed. Why they remain so adamant, even in the face of contradictory evidence. This wasn't a moment that slipped through the cracks. It was a moment that never happened, yet refuses to disappear. Residual traces in pop culture? Some even point to old pop culture and early internet sources that seem to support the false memory. Misdated obituaries online. Fan-made tributes uploaded before his actual death. Fictional references to Mandela's death in older books or magazines. Could these be simply errors, misinformation, mistranslations? Or are they residual echoes of a past timeline? A version of history that once existed, but has since been overwritten. The timeline theory takes hold. For many, the Mandela Effect wasn't just a name. It was a revelation. This wasn't about being wrong. This was about something changing. If Nelson Mandela truly died in the 1980s in one version of reality, and didn't in another, then the only possible conclusion was terrifying. We are no longer living in the same timeline. Something, somewhere shifted, and our memories are the only remaining evidence. This is where the theory of timeline convergence was born. The idea that multiple versions of reality exist side by side, and that at some point, two or more timelines may have merged, leaving behind broken memories like shattered glass on a polished floor. the moment everything changed. In hindsight, the Mandela effect wasn't caused by Mandela's memory. It was revealed by it. It showed people that their perception of the past could no longer be trusted. And once the door was opened, more anomalies poured through. The Berenstain bears. Luke, I am your father. Curious George's tale. The Monopoly man's monocle. Fruit of the loom's cornucopia. Each memory. A clue. Each contradiction. A warning. Why this memory matters so much. It's easy to dismiss the Mandela death memory as a mass error, a fluke. But for those who lived it, or believe they did, it was a moment of deep emotional dissonance, like remembering a loved one's funeral only to find them still alive. It's not just about being wrong. It's about feeling like you're the only one who noticed the world has changed. That's what makes the Mandela effect so powerful and so frightening. Because if you can't trust your memory of something as monumental as a world leader's death, what can you trust? Your past, your perception, your own mind. And perhaps the bigger question is, what else has changed that we haven't noticed yet? Part 3. Timeline shifts and collective memory. Time is supposed to be linear, fixed, immutable. We grow, we learn, we remember. But what if time isn't a straight line? What if it's a web, and we've slipped through the threads? What if the past has changed, and we're the only ones who remember how it used to be? The most disturbing theory surrounding the Mandela effect doesn't blame your memory. It doesn't say you're mistaken. It doesn't chalk things up to cognitive bias. Instead, it suggests something far more terrifying, that you remember it correctly. But the timeline you came from no longer exists. Welcome to the theory of timeline shifts, a concept born out of confusion, fear, and a growing sense that reality may not be as solid as we once believed. A fracture in time? Think of your life as a single road stretching from your birth to this very moment. Now imagine waking up one day and noticing something small, just a detail, is different. Maybe it's a logo. Maybe it's a quote. Maybe it's a memory from your childhood. Something that shouldn't be wrong, but is. At first, it seems like nothing. A hiccup, a brain fog. But then you realize others noticed it too. They remember what you remember, exactly the same way. And yet, the world says you're wrong. That's when the cracks start to appear. What if it's not your memory that changed, but everything else? The theory of parallel realities. One of the most compelling and haunting explanations is that we're living in a multiverse, an infinite collection of universes, each with its own version of reality. In one universe, it's Berenstein bears. In another, it's Berenstain. In one, Curious George has a tail. In another, he never did. In one, Nelson Mandela died in prison. In another, he lived and became president. The idea is that somehow our consciousness, yours, mine, everyone watching this video, has shifted from one timeline into another. Maybe it was a cosmic event. Maybe it was a quantum misfire. Maybe it was something man-made, an experiment gone wrong. Whatever the cause, the effects are undeniable. Our minds remember the old timeline, but the new one has overwritten the evidence. Collective memory as residue of the old timeline. In most false memory cases, errors are individual, random, scattered, explainable. But the Mandela effect is different. It involves millions of people remembering the exact same thing in the exact same way with vivid detail, across different countries, generations, and cultures. That's not just psychology. That's residual memory, a leftover imprint, a psychic scar, a whisper of a past that was once real. We may not have the physical evidence, but our collective memory holds onto fragments, scattered, imperfect, but insistent. It's as if the timeline was reformatted, and the only thing that didn't update was us. Quantum possibilities. The theory of timeline shifts isn't just science fiction. It has roots in quantum theory. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles behave differently depending on whether they are being observed. Reality itself changes based on consciousness. Some scientists theorize that consciousness and reality are entangled, that we don't just observe the universe, we actively shape it. So what happens if our consciousness somehow slides sideways into a slightly different version of the world? That's what some believe the Mandela Effect is, a sign that our consciousness has jumped timelines, while the physical world around us kept marching forward in the new reality. We remember the old one, but we no longer live there. You're not alone, and that's the scariest part. If this happened to just one person, it could be dismissed as delusion. But it's not just one person, it's millions. And they're not just forgetting, they're remembering together. This global synchronicity is what turns the Mandela Effect from a curiosity into a crisis of perception. When entire communities share the same false memory, it begins to feel like more than coincidence. It feels like confirmation. When the compass breaks. Memory is our internal compass. It's how we navigate the world, how we define who we are. But if your memories no longer align with reality, that compass breaks. Suddenly, the foundation beneath you, your past, your identity, your certainty, becomes unstable. That's why people find the Mandela Effect so haunting. It's not about misremembering a cereal box or a cartoon character. It's about the psychological dissonance of being right and wrong at the same time. You become unmoored, floating between two versions of the world, unsure which one is real, or worse. What if neither of them is? A breakdown or a breakthrough? Is this mass confusion or mass awakening? Some believe the Mandela Effect isn't a glitch. It's a signal, a warning that reality is more malleable than we realized, that time can bend, that memory can fracture, that nothing is fixed. Maybe this is the beginning of a deeper understanding, or maybe it's the beginning of a deeper collapse, a slow unraveling of our connection to the timeline we once called home. The timeline has shifted, and we remember. If you've ever felt like something small had changed, and everyone else seemed to play along, you're not crazy. If you swear you remember Curious George with a tail, or Berenstein instead of Berenstain, or a quote that no longer exists, you're not broken. You might just be awake. Because when enough people remember a world that no longer exists, maybe it's not the memory that's wrong. Maybe it's the world. Part 4. Top Mandela Effect examples. You've made it this far down the rabbit hole. You understand the concept. You've felt the fracture. But now, it's time to face the evidence. Because this isn't just theory. These are the cases that keep people up at night. The ones that make even the skeptics whisper, "Wait a minute, that's not how I remember it." 1. The Berenstain Bears, or Berenstain. This is ground zero for many people's Mandela Effect awakening. Ask almost anyone who grew up in the 80s or 90s about the beloved children's book series. The stories about the wholesome bear family who lived in the treehouse. They'll tell you it was the Berenstain bears, with an E-I-N, like Frankenstein, like Einstein, like every other Stein in Western culture. And yet, that's wrong. Every book, every episode, every piece of official merchandise today says Berenstain with an A-I-N. And it's always been that way. There is no published version from any official source that uses Berenstein. No alternate covers, no early printings, no archived editions, nothing. And yet, millions remember it differently. Some people say they remember arguing about it in school. Others remember their parents helping them pronounce it as Berenstein. Some even claim to have found old books in attics or libraries with the E-I-N spelling, only to return later and discover that the spelling had mysteriously changed. It's as if reality went back and corrected the books, but forgot to change your memory. 2. Mirror, mirror on the wall, the Disney lie. The Queen stands before her enchanted mirror. She lifts her arms. Her voice turns icy, and she says the line every child can quote by heart. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Except she doesn't. In the 1937 Disney classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the actual line is magic mirror on the wall. There's no mirror, mirror. Not in the film, not in the script, not in any official Disney source. And yet, that iconic phrase, mirror, mirror, has appeared in pop culture endlessly. Parodies, TV references, merchandise, books, children's toys, even Shrek. So how is it that we all quote a line that was never spoken? Some say it's just cultural osmosis. We've repeated the incorrect quote for so long, it became fact in our minds. But others believe it's residue. Proof that in another timeline, mirror, mirror was the original line. 3. Curious George's missing tail. We covered this in depth in our previous episode, but it's worth repeating here. Curious George, the mischievous monkey, your childhood companion in books and cartoons. You remember him swinging from branches, hanging from fans, using his tail like a fifth limb, right? Except he never had one. Not in the books, not in the cartoons, not in the toys. Curious George is tailless, and he always has been, at least in this timeline. The shock for many isn't just the absence of the tail, it's the clarity of the memory. People swear they remember seeing it, drawing it, playing with plushies that had it. So where did the tail go? Did we all just assume? Or did we lose something in the shift? 4. The Monopoly man's missing monocle. Picture him in your mind. Top hat, black suit, pointed mustache, and a monocle, right? He's the Monopoly man, the face of the classic board game. But here's the twist. He has never worn a monocle. Check every version of the game, every official Hasbro image. Not a single monocle in sight. So where did that memory come from? Some claim it's a confusion with Mr. Peanut, the Planters mascot, who does wear a monocle. But that doesn't explain the unshakable certainty people feel. They remember it too clearly. It's as if our minds downloaded the wrong texture file. Or, more chillingly, the Monopoly man once did wear a monocle, and now he doesn't. 5. Pikachu's tail, black tip or not. Pikachu, the iconic Pokemon mascot. You know the look, yellow body, red cheeks, lightning bolt tail. But is the tip of the tail black? If you said yes, you're not alone. Millions of fans swear Pikachu's tail had a black tip, and some even drew it that way as kids. But official images today show no black tip. Never had one. Not in the games, not in the anime, not in the trading cards. And yet, people remember it, consistently. They even remember the way the black faded into the yellow. So again, did we all imagine it? Or did it change? 6. Febreze, or Febreze. You've probably used it. That little blue bottle that freshens up clothes and rooms. You've seen the name 100 times. Febreze, right? But take a look now. Febreze, with one E in the middle. No matter how many times people look at the label today, they're stunned, because they know it had 2 E's. Some swear they remember TV commercials saying it slowly, Febreze. Others insist they've seen the old spelling in bathroom cupboards or under sinks. But just like the rest, the official record says it's always been Febreze. 7. Luke, I am your father, the line that never was. Arguably the most quoted line in cinematic history, and it doesn't exist. In Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, during the pivotal reveal of Darth Vader's identity, fans around the world remember the line as, Luke, I am your father. But if you watch the scene, the actual quote is, No, I am your father. There's no Luke. It's never been there. And yet, the incorrect line is everywhere. From movie parodies to commercials, t-shirts to trivia games. Even actors have misquoted it. So where did the phantom Luke come from? Mandela Effect believers argue this is one of the strongest cases of reality revision, because everyone remembers the wrong line. 8. We are the champions. Incomplete ending. Queen's anthemic hit, We Are the Champions, ends with a bang. Or so you think. We are the champions of the world. You can hear it now, can't you? Except that ending doesn't exist in the studio version of the song. The actual track ends with, We are the champions. Silence. No of the world, not at the end, not even quietly. Fans have gone into a frenzy over this, because the final phrase feels burned into their memory. Concert recordings do sometimes include the Of the World outro, but the original song never did. So, did we all just fill in the blank? Or did we once live in a world where Freddie finished the line, and now he doesn't? What these examples have in common. Each of these cases shares the same chilling traits, widespread agreement among unrelated people. High confidence in the false memory, a lack of physical evidence supporting that memory, a feeling of dissonance or betrayal when shown the real version. They're not just mistakes, they're shadows of something deeper. Maybe they're proof that our minds are not as trustworthy as we think. The timeline has shifted beneath our feet, or something, or someone is rewriting the past. Part 5. Psychological explanations. The human brain is powerful, but it's also fragile. It helps us survive, adapt, imagine, and remember. But what if it also lies? What if the Mandela Effect isn't a glitch in reality, but a glitch in you? For all the mystery and paranormal speculation surrounding the Mandela Effect, there remains a grounded, rational, and to some. Deeply unsettling possibility. The problem isn't with the world. The problem is with your mind. Psychologists and neuroscientists argue that the Mandela effect is not a sign of quantum shifts or timeline manipulation. It's a sign that memory itself is unreliable, an evolving, reconstructed narrative that changes every time we recall it. Let's explore the leading psychological explanations behind this phenomenon, and why, for some, they're more frightening than any simulation theory. 1. Confabulation, filling in the blanks. Our brains are not video recorders. They don't store perfect, unchanging footage of every experience. Instead, memory is reconstructed, not retrieved. Like a puzzle, your brain rebuilds using scattered pieces and assumptions. And when pieces are missing, your brain makes them up, not to deceive, but to make the memory feel complete. This process is called confabulation, the brain's way of filling in gaps with information it assumes must be true. You remember the Monopoly man with a monocle? Why? Because wealthy, old-fashioned cartoon characters often have monocles. Mr. Peanut has one. Therefore, your brain fills in the blank. You remember Feebreeze instead of Feebreeze. That's because double E words like breeze are more common, and Feebreeze just looks wrong. It's not a lie, it's a shortcut. But when enough people take the same shortcut, a Mandela effect is born. Second, schema theory, the brain's mental templates. A schema is a mental framework, a model your brain uses to categorize and understand the world. We all have schemas for everything. What a dog looks like, what a teacher acts like, what a monkey should have, hint, a tail. So when we see Curious George labeled as a monkey, our monkey schema expects a tail. Even if it's not there, our brain silently adds it, not as deception, but as efficiency. This also explains why we remember Berenstein. The Stein suffix is more familiar and phonetically common than stain. Our brains default to what fits the pattern. Schemas are helpful. They allow us to react quickly to the world, but they can also overwrite truth. And when that happens, your brain remembers the version that makes more sense, even if it never happened. 3. Source monitoring error. Memory's identity crisis. Memory isn't just about what we remember. It's about where that memory came from. That's called source monitoring, your brain's ability to track the origin of a memory. Did I see that in real life? Did I dream it? Was it a movie, a book, a friend's story? When this breaks down, you get a source monitoring error. Your brain remembers something clearly, but misattributes the source. So that memory of Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father." Maybe it didn't come from the movie. Maybe it came from a parody, a cartoon, a commercial, and your brain moved it. Now it feels real, but it's borrowed. In the chaos of pop culture, advertising, memes, and repetition, source confusion becomes inevitable. And so does the Mandela effect. 4th, social contagion, the memory virus. The Mandela effect is not just personal, it's contagious. Once someone confidently shares a false memory, others begin to adopt it. Not because they're gullible, but because memory is social. We construct our personal histories not just alone, but with others. When you hear multiple people confidently say, "It was Berenstein, not Berenstain," your brain begins to doubt itself. The more people agree, the more real it feels. This is known as memory conformity. When a group discussion changes how individuals remember an event. In extreme cases, People have confessed to crimes they didn't commit simply because group pressure altered their memory. So imagine what happens when millions of people are exposed to a viral, emotionally resonant memory. Like Mandela dying in prison. Your brain doesn't just record the lie, it adopts it. 5. The false memory phenomenon. The Mandela Effect is essentially a type of false memory, a psychological phenomenon where someone recalls something that did not occur. But false memories are more than mistakes. They are complete experiences that feel as real as true ones. In experiments, researchers have successfully implanted false memories in test subjects, memories of being lost in a shopping mall, spilling punch at a wedding, meeting Bugs Bunny at Disneyland. He's a Warner Bros. Character. This never happened. And in every case, participants didn't just believe the memory. They remembered the color of the room, the feeling of fear, the exact dialogue. That's how powerful the brain is. It doesn't just store memories. It writes stories, and sometimes it lies. So is it all in your head? Maybe. Psychology gives us tools to explain how the Mandela Effect happens. Confabulation, schema errors, social influence. But even these explanations don't fully satisfy. They don't explain why the false memories are so widespread, why they're so consistent across cultures and generations, why people are so certain, even when presented with evidence. That's why for many, psychological explanations feel more disturbing than comforting. Because if our memories are this fragile, what else have we forgotten? What else has been rewritten? Not by the universe, but by our own minds. The mind, a haunted house of memory. Maybe the Mandela Effect isn't a glitch in the matrix. Maybe it's a crack in our collective mind, a warning that our memories are not reliable witnesses, that what we know to be true might be anything but. That's the true terror. Not that the world has changed, but that you never saw it clearly to begin with. Part 6. Paranormal and Quantum Theories. What if the Mandela Effect isn't a failure of memory, but a failure of the universe? If psychology can't explain why millions remember the same impossible things, maybe the answer isn't in the mind. Maybe it's in reality itself. Because when the logic fails, the whispers grow louder. Welcome to the darker side of the Mandela Effect, the side where the rules bend, where science meets speculation, and where memory may be the only true map left behind after the shift. 1. Parallel universes and timeline collisions. Let's begin with the most popular and most chilling theory of them all. We are shifting between alternate realities. According to this theory, we don't live in a single, fixed timeline. We live in a multiverse, an infinite branching of parallel universes, each with slight variations. In one universe, it's Berenstein. In another, Berenstain. In one, Mandela died in prison. In another, he became president. In one, Curious George had a tail. In this one, he never did. And somehow, for reasons we don't understand, our consciousness drifted from one version of reality to another. This is known as a timeline convergence, a bleed-through of neighboring realities, a cosmic collision. And we, the ones who notice the Mandela Effect, are the residue left behind. We remember what the current world has forgotten. We woke up in the wrong timeline, and our memories didn't come with us. How would that even work? Modern physics, especially quantum mechanics, supports the idea that multiple versions of reality may exist simultaneously. According to the many worlds interpretation of quantum theory, every decision, every particle interaction, every quantum event creates a split, another universe. In one, you clicked this video. In another, you didn't. In one, you lived through one version of history. In another, a slightly different one. And over time, those realities can branch and branch until they no longer resemble each other at all. But what if something, some cosmic anomaly, caused those timelines to collide, or merge, or swap? You wouldn't notice the change right away. Most things would feel familiar, but small details, names, quotes, logos, would feel wrong. And you'd be left with a deep, haunting feeling. This is not my world. Second simulation theory, a glitch in the matrix. Imagine for a moment that everything you know, the people, the places, the memories, is part of an ultra-advanced simulation. This is simulation theory, the belief that reality is not real, but rendered. A program, a construct, a highly complex illusion designed by an intelligence far beyond our understanding. In this scenario, the Mandela Effect is not just an error in memory. It's a bug in the system. Think of it like a software update. A logo gets changed. A line of dialogue gets edited. A character's design is slightly tweaked. But the old version still lives inside you, because your consciousness is out of sync with the new patch. You're remembering the previous build of reality. You're the ghost data that wasn't overwritten. And the rest of the world, they've been successfully updated. 3. CERN, the Higgs boson, and the day everything changed. Some theorists trace the beginning of mass Mandela effects to a specific moment in history, July 4th, 2012, the day scientists at CERN announced they had discovered the Higgs boson, also called the God particle. This subatomic particle is believed to be what gives matter its mass, a fundamental building block of the universe. But what if, in uncovering this particle, we tore something open? A dimensional seam, a ripple in the quantum fabric of reality, a fracture between parallel universes. Some believe CERN's high-energy collisions may have collapsed multiple timelines into one, or nudged us sideways into a neighboring reality, or damaged the natural flow of time altogether. Is it coincidence that after 2012, Mandela effects became more frequent, more global, more specific, or was something set in motion that day? 4. Quantum consciousness, slipping between realities. Another theory suggests that the Mandela effect isn't physical at all, but consciousness-based. It proposes that your soul, your awareness, your identity is quantum in nature, and therefore capable of moving between realities. Imagine timelines like radio frequencies. Most people are tuned into one station, but some, for reasons unknown, can slip frequencies. They retain memories from the previous station, even as the world shifts around them. They are the timeline drifters, carrying pieces of a lost universe. This would explain why Mandela effects often feel so emotional, so personal, so specific. You're not just misremembering, you're mourning. 5. Spiritual and occult interpretations. For some, the Mandela effect isn't scientific at all, it's spiritual. They believe it's a sign that we are entering a new phase of human consciousness, a kind of mass awakening, where the veil between dimensions is thinning. Perhaps the Mandela effect is a test, designed to show us that reality is not what it seems. Or maybe it's an attack, an attempt to confuse and separate us from truth. In esoteric belief systems, memory is tied to soul resonance, and if your soul isn't fully aligned with this version of the world, you'll feel it. You'll remember the other version, and it will haunt you. So what's really happening? We don't know. That's the honest truth. Maybe it's quantum science. Maybe it's divine intervention. Maybe it's all in our minds. Or maybe it's all of it at once. But the Mandela Effect remains one of the few modern phenomena that crosses every boundary. Psychological, spiritual, scientific, emotional, and existential. And whether it's a glitch, a ghost, a tear in the code, or a cry for help from another version of you, you noticed it, and that makes you part of something bigger than just a memory. When science fails, the whispers begin. When logic breaks down, when the explanations grow thin, when you see something that shouldn't have changed, but did, you're left with nothing but a whisper that says, this isn't the world you were born into. And maybe it never was. Part 7. Cultural Impact and Collective Disorientation. The Mandela Effect doesn't just live in your mind, it lives in your world. It's not just a question of memory anymore. It's a question of trust. Trust in what you see. Trust in what you've lived. And most terrifying of all, trust in who you are. Because what started as a curious glitch, a wrong spelling, a forgotten line, has become something much deeper, a crisis of certainty. 1. Memory as identity. Your memories are not just records, they are mirrors. They tell you where you've been, who you are, what's real. When someone tells you you're wrong, and they're not talking about math or trivia, they're talking about your life. Something happens, something breaks, because if your memories can betray you, if the world can change behind your back, then what parts of your identity are real? The Mandela Effect doesn't just erode trust in external reality, it erodes the self. Second generational divide, a world remembered differently. One of the strangest effects of the Mandela Effect is the way it creates memory gaps between generations. Ask someone born in the 80s about the Berenstain bears, and they'll swear it was Berenstein. Ask someone born after 2010, they'll look at you blankly. Ask an adult if Curious George had a tail. Many will say yes. Ask a child who grew up with the newer cartoons. They'll say he never did, and be right. This isn't just about being wrong. It's about living in different worlds. Parents and children now carry conflicting versions of the past. Classrooms, households, siblings, all split across invisible timelines. It's not generational ignorance. It's cognitive drift. And it's happening in real time. 3. Trust in institutions and the collapse of consensus. Once upon a time, we believed that books, history, and media were stable. Facts were facts. Print didn't change. Video footage didn't lie. But now, logos morph, movie lines vanish, song lyrics rewrite themselves, and Wikipedia edits reality every second. In the age of deepfakes, AI, algorithmic bias, and retroactive editing, people are beginning to lose trust in everything. The news, the internet, archives, even their own eyes. The Mandela Effect embodies this collapse. It's not just about misremembering. It's about feeling like the world is gaslighting you. You're told, that never existed. But you remember it. You lived it. So either you're losing your mind, or the world is lying. And which one is scarier? 4. The rise of digital echo chambers and Mandela Effect communities. As confusion spread, the internet, as it always does, gave that confusion a home. Reddit forums, TikTok threads, YouTube channels, MandelaEffect.com. Hundreds of thousands of people gathering to compare their wrong memories. Wait, you remember it that way too? I thought I was the only one. I could have sworn. These communities don't just validate, they amplify. They've become digital sanctuaries for the memory wounded, for the timeline displaced, for those who no longer trust the ground beneath their feet. And like all echo chambers, they create a loop. Doubt becomes belief. Belief becomes proof. Proof becomes doctrine. For better or worse, the Mandela Effect is no longer just a curiosity. It's a movement. 5. Cultural grief. Mourning the past that no longer exists. Here's a strange idea. Maybe the Mandela Effect isn't about memory at all. Maybe it's about grief. A deep, silent mourning for a version of the world that felt simpler, clearer, safer. When you discover Curious George never had a tail. When you realize Queen never sang of the world at the end of We Are the Champions. It's not just disappointment, it's loss. You're grieving a part of your childhood that has been erased, not by time, but by something else. And that grief lingers. It's the uncanny chill in your spine when the world doesn't match the one in your head, and there's no grave to visit, no eulogy to give, no one else to mourn with, except strangers online who feel the same. 6. Collective disorientation, a mirror with no reflection. The Mandela Effect doesn't ask us to reject reality. It asks us to question it. And that questioning, once started, doesn't stop. You begin to wonder, what else have I remembered wrong? What else has changed? Has everything changed? You second-guess movie lines, brand names, song lyrics, even the shape of continents. You feel like a stranger in your own memories, and reality becomes a hall of mirrors. Every reflection slightly off. This is more than disorientation. It's existential vertigo. The Mandela Effect isn't just a phenomenon. It's a reckoning. It forces you to confront the unthinkable. That memory may be a lie, that the past may be unstable, that your world may not be yours anymore. And in a world where reality feels increasingly plastic, flexible, and editable, maybe the Mandela Effect is the final red flag, a signal that truth itself is dissolving, that the lines between what was, what is, and what might have been have begun to blur. So maybe we didn't just forget. Maybe we're remembering something we weren't supposed to. Part 8. Final thoughts. You came here to learn about the Mandela Effect, a strange name, a strange idea, just another internet rabbit hole, or so you thought. But now, you're not so sure, because you felt it, that flicker of wrongness, that creeping sensation that something's off, not just in a memory, but in everything. This isn't just about logos and cartoons. It's about the fragile structure of reality itself, the way memories guide our identity, the way timelines shape our truth, the way a child's book, a cereal box, or a movie quote can become a mirror, revealing that the past is not as stable as we were told. Maybe it's psychological, maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's quantum, or maybe it's something else entirely. But one thing is certain, we are noticing. And once you start noticing, you can't go back. So, what do you remember? Do you remember Berenstein or Berenstain? Did Curious George have a tail? Did the Queen say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall"? Or are you starting to doubt everything? You're not alone. Millions feel the same way. And maybe, just maybe, we're not all wrong. Maybe we're the ones left behind, the ones who remember the truth. Thank you for watching Whims and Whispers. If this video made you question your past, even for a moment, then we've done our job, because Whims and Whispers isn't here to give you answers. We're here to guide you through the questions, the ones that keep you up at night, the ones that pull at the threads of your memories, the ones you're afraid to say out loud. Did the world change? Did I change? Was it always this way? Or did something shift when I wasn't looking? If you felt a chill during this journey, if your childhood just shattered a little, or if you now see the world in a different light, like this video. Subscribe for more timelines, twisted truths, and reality-bending deep dives. Share with someone who remembers things differently. And most importantly, tell us in the comments, what's your Mandela Effect? What memory haunts you the most? Because we're collecting stories. Stories from the ones who noticed, the ones who remember, the ones who whisper. Thank you for joining us on this journey through forgotten timelines and fractured memories. Until next time, be careful which stories you believe, because behind every memory, there's a truth waiting to escape.